computer. All right, so now that Rabbi Bernat's here, not here, let's all talk about him. You could write in the chat, and he's not going to see this recording anyway, so you can write the nastiest things you want. Don't worry about it. Okay, anyway, whoa, that's really harsh. Okay, forget it. Okay, he might actually look at the video. Okay, anyway, so for those watching the video, Rabbi Bernath is in Israel. We kicked him out of NDG. So he's now in Israel for this week, and next week I'm running the class. I'm running the show. All right, let's talk about Ayin Hara today. We've heard of Ayin Hara, right? Ayin Hara. There are some people who have. There's the hamsas, right? The hands that people keep either on them, like as earrings, or I don't know, with their pocket knives, or on their walls of their house. There you go. There's a great example, Alessandra, on the wall of the house. Wow, this was not planned. This is an advanced hamsa because it's like all Kabbalistic. It's got some serious Magen David and circles and a whole bunch of things.
Comes from Sfez in Morocco.
Wow, and Ilana, look at Ilana's screen. There's like 30 hamsa. She has like a hamsa collection. I think that that's like that. I would call that an octopus hamsa. So yeah, because there's like 8 hands up there. Anyway, that's one example. Then there's the string. You ever see those strings for the Ayin Hara that people have? And people have all sorts of different stuff that we do for Ayin Hara. And some of them, for example, calling up to the Torah. We don't call up a son after a father, or a father after a son, or a brother after a brother. If you ever do a simcha and you try to try to get in shul. So they always need to coordinate that, like, it'll be an uncle and then a nephew and then a grandfather. And then, so it shouldn't be so close relative, because Ayin Hara, maybe one of them is better than the other. And anyway, so what's the whole deal with Ayin Hara? Where does it come from? And what is it really? And what is it? So I'll start, most of it will probably be practical, but then I'll get into a little bit of Hasidus and Kabbalah, and a little bit of how it works now. So to start off, we go to, I guess, the oldest. You know what? Here's where I'll start. I pulled out a Tanakh. It's a very old Tanakh. My father's. It's Yiddish and Hebrew. It's a wild Tanakh here. So it's Shmuel Aleph, the beginning of Shmuel Aleph. We have the story of Shmuel. By the way, Shmuel Aleph is the most disappointing. Shmuel, the books of Shmuel. Oh, someone's waiting to come in. The books of Shmuel are very disappointing in that. Like a spoiler alert, but Shmuel, the guy the books are named after, he like dies halfway through the first book. So, should have renamed it. Anyway, so the first book of Samuel. In the first book of Samuel, hi, welcome Cheryl and Fami. We're talking about Ayin Hara. So in the first book of Samuel, it talks about Samuel's birth and his mother. And stop me if you've all heard this, but it's the story of Hannah and Eli. Hannah and Eli. Hannah was just one of 2 wives, and long story short, she wanted to have children. She couldn't have children, and so she went to where the tabernacle was in Shiloh, and over there was the high priest Eli, and he was and Hannah went and began praying. This is one of the first examples of prayer, which the oldest examples of prayer that it really came from the heart, and it tells us her prayer. Check it out. Here's her prayer. So it's in chapter 1, verse 11. Vatidar neder, she made a vow. She was crying as she is praying for a child, and she said, Hashem tzavakos, imra'i tira ba'oni amasecha, Hashem, the great God, my rock. If you can see in your poor maid woman, uzchartani, and remember me, but not forget your maidservant, referring to herself. Zera anashim, give your maidservant zera anashim, the seed of men. Now, the question you could ask is, what is she referring to? She could have just said a child. What does it mean? The seed of a man, right? So I guess let me ask you guys, what do you think? Any ideas of what she's referring to over there? Because that's what I want to zone in on. I'll give some options. And by the way, you could unmute and just chat. This is not just me speaking. But so one explanation there. There's some of the commentaries they talk about this, and one explanation is a man among men. That zera anoshim, that he should be. It's plural, a seed of men. It's referring to my child should be a man among men. There's another explanation. Which men is she referring to? Moses and Aaron. She wanted a great son, right? And then the last answer that explanation. These three explanations come from the Gemara, the Talmud, is, and this comes from Rav Dimi. It's a child who is swallowed up among the people. So this is the beginning of the Ayin Hara discussion, because it's a very strange answer. Rav Dimi explains, what does it mean, a child who's swallowed up among the people? He says someone who's very average, not too tall, not too short, not too skinny, not too fat, not too smart, not too dumb, not too I guess white, not too dark. Now, all of these, they all sound good except one. Which one were you a little like weirded out with? And I'm not talking from a modern perspective, the of racism, of not too dark, not too light. I'm talking about, did any of them seem like something a mother would not typically ask for in a child?
Not too dumb and not too smart.
That's right. That's exactly. Not too dumb and not too smart. Not too dumb. Okay, that makes sense. I don't want my kid to be dumb. I don't want him to be a moron, or her to be a moron. But not too smart. Come on. What parent doesn't want their child to be a genius, right? Isn't it in Jewish education? Like we tell our children, work hard, learn. What did you ask today in school? Did you ask any good questions? We after school, we send our kids to programs to learn even more. You people are in here in a class studying more, right? Don't you want your if you have children, and your children are of school age, or you want a child, you would want your child to be studying whatever it is. The more education, the better. That's a very big value in Judaism. So how could she be asking not that her child should not become a chacham, a smart person? So Rashi has an explanation. Rashi, he is the foremost commentator on in the Torah, in Tanakh, and in the Gemara, which is a massive amount of writing that he did. In fact, you could probably say that before he lived, he lived in the 1100s. Before he was, or he started in the 1080s or something, and he lived somewhere to 1150. And he lived in northern France, and you would say that before he changed Talmudic learning in particular. Before he wrote his commentary, the Gemara was very difficult to learn. If you want to study the Talmud and you try to figure it out by yourself, it's extremely difficult. Only like the elite could pull that off, and he made it very simple. In fact, you've ever seen this hard rock sign? This hard rock sign is the Gemara sign. I learned it for Gemara, and this is not me learning it. It's something that they teach in every yeshiva. How you learn Gemara, you learn it with Rashi. So, whoops, this is the wrong Gemara. Let me here demonstration. If this is a page of Gemara, this is Gemara, this is Rashi. So I would read it. I'm moving through the Gemara, then I'm moving through Rashi. Were you able to see? I hope so. Okay. Anyway, so Rashi, and there's actually a joke I'll quickly share because jokes are worth it. Where Rashi, he was one day, him and his wife were on their way out of the house to go to a wedding, and his wife comes. She says, "Rashi, how do I look?" And he says, "Your earrings don't match your shoes, and your dress is a little off. Maybe you should change and put on a different makeup." And she says, "Rashi, do you have to comment on everything?" Anyway, so yeah, it's a good one. So Rashi says, It's a Satanist sign too. That's what Julian says. This is a Satanist sign. I don't know. It works for me in learning Gemara. When I learn Gemara, I one finger is pointing at the Gemara, one finger at Rashi. Now, Rashi says, as far as this whole thing of not being too smart, Rashi says you don't want the child to be too much of a genius. In other words, he shouldn't be like a phenomenon, right? Why? He shouldn't be like one of these weirdos that's, people come from around the world to stare at him. Why? Rashi says, then the Ayin Hara will rule over him. So here we have an example of the Ayin Hara, right? Hannah was praying that there should be no Ayin Hara. I want a child, but I want a child who should not have an Ayin Hara over him. Ironically, by the way, that child would end up being one of the greatest geniuses of all time. So that's one little piece of the Ayin Hara. There are other points, and actually another good example is from the Mishnah in Avos, where it talks about Ayin Hara and Ayin Ra. So in the Ethics of Our Father, it says what's a good way to it says what are bad. You know what? I could probably even share my screen. Do I have it? I think I opened it before. Chapter 2, verse 9. Here we go. So let me share my screen, at least for this. If it works, it works. Why not? One moment. And share. All right. Oh, I'm sorry. I was doing a little bit of research. This was, I'm sorry. I'm just trying to figure out certain stuff. Okay. Anyway, so it's chapter 2. So I'll read the English, but it's pretty simple. This is what's happening is Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, who was the greatest rabbi at the destruction of the Second Temple time. So around the year 70 CE, he was the leading rabbi, and he had 5 great students. And actually, very famously, I think it's the previous one right here at the bottom, he's talking about the 5 of them. And he used to say, look, Rabbi Yochanan used to say, if you can see my mouse, if all the sages of Israel were on one side of the scale, Rabbi Eliezer ben Hyrcanus on the other side, he would outweigh them all. That's how fat Rabbi Eliezer ben Hyrcanus was. No, I'm joking. I'm sorry. He's saying he was a great man. Anyway, so now he turned to his students, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, and he said, over here, he said, go forth and observe which is the right way to which a man should cleave. What's the good path of life, basically? So Rabbi Eliezer said, a good eye, right? Rabbi Yeshua, so remember, Rabbi Eliezer outweighs the others. Rabbi Yeshua says a good companion. Rabbi Yosef says a good neighbor. Rabbi Shimon says foresight. Oh boy, I'd rather translate it myself because I don't like these translations. Rabbi Yeshua said a good friend. Rabbi Yosef said a good neighbor. Rabbi Shimon says haroya es hanoilad, who sees what's coming, who's someone who who could see appreciate the future. And Rabbi Elazar said a good heart, and then he said Rabbi Elazar ben Arach, the good heart wins because everyone else's is in the middle. Okay. Then he asks, what's the bad way? What bad things should you avoid? What's Rabbi Elazar's answer? Can anyone read it in Hebrew? Ayin ra'ah. Ayin ra'ah. So there you have an example, but it's not Ayin Hara, it's Ayin ra'ah. Okay, let me stop sharing my screen. I'll continue learning how to clap my hands later. Now, and another point in Pirkei Avos, it says what are things that they're so that was Ayin Ra'ah, not Ayin Hara.
Rabbi,
Yes.
sorry, most people here don't speak Hebrew. So you may want to explain the difference between Ayin Hara and Ayin Ra.
I'm getting to that.
Sorry.
Well,
Apologies.
but that's a good point. So Ayin Hara is the bad eye, the evil eye. Ayin Ra'ah is evil eye, right? It's very subtle, the difference. It's actually I'm getting way ahead of myself. I forget who says this. I think it's the Mittel Rebbe. It's the second Lubavitcher Rebbe who says that one major difference is that there is the eye itself doesn't have any power. So when you say a bad eye, it's referring when you're talking Ayin Hara, a bad eye, it's referring to the Ayin Shebemoichin, which is the eye that is inside the brain, really inside the intellect. It's an intellectual eye, kind of. And that's kind of leading to what Ayin Hara is. And later on, it says in the same Ethics of Our Fathers in the Pirkei Avos, it says that Ayin Hara removes a person from the world. It's one of the things that removes a person from the world. So it's a very serious thing. And now we're going to get to a very famous and controversial source of Ayin Hara. And yeah, this is going to sound like it's one of the more messed up stories from the Gemara, which is filled with it's a wild ride. You open up a Gemara, you have no idea what's coming up next. That's part of the fun of learning Gemara. But in the Gemara says in Brachas, some of you are learning Brachas with Rabbi Bernath, I think. So you may have read this. It's the story of Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan, sorry, not Rav Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan, he was a Talmudic scholar who lived around the time right after the Mishnah was completed. He's a first generation right after that. They were called the Amoraim. Those are the rabbis who lived, and he's a Gemara rabbi, but from the first generation. There were 5 or 6 generations, and he was from the first generation of that. He was someone who was well known for his beauty. Spell both words. If someone, Kelsey asked if someone could spell those words. I'm just looking at the comments quick, but I see Julian asked inner eye, or is that a psychic eye? So that's what I'm getting at. What's the inner eye might be a better explanation. I wouldn't say it's psychic. Ayin Hara is not referring to psychic, like psychic as in seeing the future, seeing something that's going on elsewhere, right? So this is referring more to, I guess, an inner eye. It's referring to something that's going on inside. It's not the actual eye that is bad. It's ourselves, something inside of us. Usually, and what people do is, oh, thank you, Alessandra. So what people do is they put up, for example, those hands, those hamsas, to protect themselves from evil eye. And I'll get into what that is. Oh boy, time's moving. So let's go back to Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan, he was very famous for he was brilliant. He was also very famous for his beauty. In fact, there's a very neat story, and a kind of weird, but also a neat story where Reish Lakish was also a very famous rabbi, and Reish Lakish's background was that he was a robber. He was one of the he led a group of robbers at that time, and this is after the destruction of the temple, a couple of generations, and this is probably the 150s, something like that. And there was bands of robbers. It was a lot of violence, and so Reish Lakish was, my wife walks in just as I'm about to tell this crazy story. So Rabbi Yochanan once went into a river to go immerse himself, to go either to the mikvah, the men's mikvah, or to wash himself. And Reish Lakish saw him, and he got up, and Reish Lakish said, "Wow, you're a good-looking guy. If you had a sister, I would marry her." And Reish Lakish responds, "You know what? I do have a sister, and if you become a righteous man, if you give up your thieving ways, I'll talk to her, and we could work something out." And that's what happened. Reish Lakish actually, I'm skipping out a whole bunch of details, but Reish Lakish, so it gives you an idea. He was a good-looking guy, and the Gemara tells us that Rabbi Yochanan used to sit outside the mikvah, the women's mikvah, and women before, as part of the religious Jewish tradition, women before having they go through the period, before they can have sex again with their husbands, they go to the mikvah. So they would come outside of the mikvah, and the first thing they would see was Rabbi Yochanan. And Rabbi Yochanan, he wanted specifically, he said, "I want them to look at me. The reason I'm sitting outside the mikvah is because when they look at me, they will see my beautiful face, and they will have beautiful children. They will have good-looking children." I told you, it's a messed up story. Marianne was like, "Whoa." Yes, yes. Today he would be imprisoned. No questions asked. But this is back in the Gemara day, the patriarchy. Oh, man. I told you, it's a controversial story. We should not be recording this. We're going to, Robert Bernath, just edit this part out later, okay? But the Gemara tells us the story. So the rabbis turned to him, and instead of asking him, like, dude, what is wrong with you? Why are you sitting outside a lady's mikvah? They asked him, aren't you worried about Ayin Hara? And that's where Ayin Hara comes in again. And he responded, no, I'm from Joseph. My ancestors are Joseph, and Joseph was not impacted by Ayin Hara. People who are from Joseph are not impacted from Ayin Hara. So now the Gemara goes into a whole back and forth. Why are people who are born from Joseph, which we don't know nowadays anymore who that is, because most of us don't know our ancestry. And it's anyway weird that he would be from Joseph, because anyway, whatever. I'm not going to go into the history now. But why is Joseph not impacted by Ayin Hara? So they bring up two places. One place, it says Ben Poras Yosef Ale Ayin, right? That is the blessing that Jacob gives Joseph. And what it says Ale Ayin. Someone the chat is rocking, by the way. This is great stuff. Should I turn to let's look at the chat for a second. Okay, inner, it might be translated inner eye. Yes. Does it have anything to do with the pituitary gland? Actually, if you look on mayimachronim.com, there is a whole discussion not related to Ayin Hara about that part of the eye and its relation kabbalistically to parts of the Torah. It's a very interesting. So look it up. Just Google I'll type it in a message. Mayimachronim. Pituitary gland or something like I probably spelled it wrong, but there. You'll find a whole separate thing over there. And I see Julian responded. Yeah, that's the third eye. Yeah, that's something that look it up. It's very cool. Okay, so going back to here. So basically Yaakov gives a blessing, and the blessing says you're going to rise above the eye, and well, it says through the eye, and then the Gemara says read it above the eye. That it means you're above the Ayin Hara. And another thing, so that's number one. Then the Gemara comes with a second reason. The second reason some of you will recognize and suddenly understand the source of something, and that is it says when Jacob blessed Joseph's sons, Ephraim and Manasseh, remember he put his hands this way, right? And he blessed them. And one of the things he says was V'yidgu larov b'kerev haaretz. Now V'yidgu has the word in it Dug, Dalid Gimel, which is fish, right? You see where I'm going with this. That he said you will multiply like fish if you translate it that way. V'yidgu larov b'kerev haaretz, you will multiply like fish across the entire earth. Which is weird because my daughter had a fish in an aquarium and it did not multiply. So I don't know what he's talking about. But anyway, it just died and we had to flush it out. Anyway, I don't want to go back to traumatic incidents. Okay, fish. People wear these like fish stuff, right? You see like on Humsas, all these fish. If Marianne takes, I think it was Marianne. No, was it Marianne? Who took us to their wall and there were fish all over? Ilana, that was you. Do any of them have fish on them? Alessandra's talking, but she's muted. Ilana, Alessandra probably have fish all over the place. We want to see the fish. There we go. Alessandra holding up a fish. If you look on here on the Hamsa, Ilana has got some fish. So this is the source of the fish. Now you know where it comes from. It comes from the Yidgu Larov B'Kerev Haaretz. That's multiply a fish. Now what? And then the Gemara says like, okay, what's so special about fish? Fish, water covers the fish. There's no Ayin Hara. Can anyone think why do fish not have? There's no Ayin Hara by fish. Here's another example Alessandra's showing us. But can anyone give why is you could unmute if you have ideas as to why fish there's no Ayin Hara. Anyone?
Well, because the fish does multiply, so
The
as
fish
you
do
said.
multiply, yes.
So no, but there was I read it because the Tunisians as well have the fish everywhere.
Yeah. It's not just a Jewish thing. It's not just a Jewish.
No.
That's true.
Does it have to
Anyway,
do with the eyes being on the side?
that it could have to do
As
with that.
opposed to-
Absolutely. I didn't see that, but that makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense.
We can't
Because
see together.
Tommy
Okay.
says because the Ayin Hara cannot go through water. Yeah. But it's really, they live like in a different world. You can be, I don't know, standing on ice today. I could go outside in Montreal and stand on some ice, and there could be tons of fish that I have no idea. I don't see them. And usually they swarm together. They're in swarms, or they're not that noticeable. They kind of like what Hannah was asking for. Remember, a child? She was asking for someone who should not stand out, someone who should kind of be quiet and not notice, not too smart, not too dumb, not too tall, not too short. That's fish. I mean, there are some beautiful fish who do stand out, but for the most part, it's not referring to those. And then there's a third thing, and that third thing is the third reason is that Yosef avoided being seduced by Potiphar's wife. So therefore, no Ayin Hara on his. He avoided eye candy. So because it's the Gemara tells us she was very beautiful. And she wanted to sleep with Joseph, and he refused. So for that reason, his descendants are not affected by the evil eye. Now, there are a couple of other points. There's another point that there are two more Gemaras I'm going to quickly bring in related to Ayin Hara. One of them is that Rav was another great. He was a very huge. He founded the Babylonian yeshivas. He started the whole Babylonian massive yeshivas system, which lasted all the way from he started it probably in the year 200 or so, and it lasted all the way down till the 1050s. And we're talking about the leading scholarship of the entire world, where there was almost no competition. There was a little bit in Israel for a period of time, but that's it. It was everyone, people in Spain and in India would write to those yeshivas. So it was kind of like the Vatican of Judaism. I don't know if the Vatican is a good comparison, but it would be that the equivalent of everyone. So Rav founded that. He's a great guy, huge rabbi. Anyway, he says that he once went into a cemetery, and he was looking around, and with his knowledge, whatever his mystical knowledge, he realized that 99% of the people in the cemetery had died because of Ayin Hara. That's quite a statement, right? 99% of people in the cemetery had died because of Ayin Hara. We're not talking about a mystical thing. The Gemara is not a mystical, that it contains some mysticism, but it's not a mystical thing. So, and I see that the chat is going wild. I should not have shared that Rabbi Yochanan story. Whoa. Okay, another. And then there's one more story just to share. Should I go through? Let me go through quickly hold on, where is this? Third eye is different than the mental eye. One is psychic, one is mental. Both could be called the inner eye and confused with each other. Okay. You used to relate Ayin Hara to superstition. So what I'm saying is Ayin Hara is not superstition. It's actually, and this is where I'm going, it's halachic. It relates to you can sue someone in Jewish law for sort of an Ayin Hara. It could be based on psychology, Julian says, which is also linked to superstition and the Kabbalah. Okay, that's fair. So the Gemara tells us, do not stand in a field with high grain and look at it. Do not look at a field with high grain, that has high standing grain, because you're gonna damage this grain, this field, through Ayin Hara. That's another thing, right? So this is another example of Ayin Hara being brought in, but a little more practical. That was the last one I was bringing in. And finally, actually, I'll bring this in. I don't know if it's related to Ayin Hara, but it does relate to laws that are applied today. And it could relate to, you could look at this as invasion of privacy, perhaps. But the Gemara has an entire section. We're talking probably something like 30 or so pages of like this. So massive amount of Gemara, massive amount of text written to it, and a massive amount of halacha called hezek re'iyah, the damage of looking. So and there's something called a hezek re'iyah wall. I can build a wall between my property and my neighbor's property because I'm concerned that he's looking at my property and damaging it through his looking at my property. That is a halachic fact. And if he tears down my hezek riyah wall, I can make him I could force him to rebuild it. I could take him to court, to Jewish court, and I could say, I built a hezek riyah wall and he tore it down. He needs to rebuild it. All right. So there's definitely something to Ayin Hara, right? I mean, that could be so there's definitely something, and I'm looking, I see over here, 1 minute, there's some more. As far as deaths go, does it connect to how our thoughts produce our actions? That's kind of where I'm going. I'm getting to how this Alessandra has a question. What's up?
Is it so the damage of looking? Okay, but that is, you know, in they also say, I mean, at least in my family, my father is like, don't talk, don't talk, don't talk. Don't say what's going on in your life. Don't encourage people looking at you. So is that why we also don't talk about what's going, like the positive things that are going on? My father is always something that he can't complain about so that people don't look at him like he's too fancy or something. You know?
That's 100%, 100 million percent exactly what Ayin Hara is. 100%. That's that you just said you gave my entire class in short. So now that we're done, let's just talk about the weather. No, I'll get back. but well said. Your father is 100% right. But what does it have to do with? Where's the power? Where does the power come from? So there's a famous Rabbeinu Yonah on Pirkei Avos. Rabbeinu Yonah was they say that if you read the Pirkei Avos without Rabbeinu Yonah, it's like, you know, you're missing the joy of it. So Rabbeinu Yonah, if you anyone who reads Pirkei Avos, the Ethics of Our Fathers and the Summer Derzer tradition, get yourself a copy with Rabbeinu Yonah or find online Rabbeinu Yonah's commentary. So he asks, what's the difference between Ayin Ra and Ayin Hara? Remember we mentioned those two above, and there was even a chat in even in the chat. The difference is Ayin Hara is someone, and he explains, someone who is not sameach bechalko, someone who is not happy with their lot. In other words, someone who is jealous. A jealous person is someone who gives an Ayin Hara. And remember, we said Ayin Hara takes a person out of the world. Jealousy takes a person out of the world. I remember when I was in Russia, I was a rabbi in Russia, in a city in Russia called Stavropol, and I used to go every Thursday and Friday to visit men and women in the community, put tefillin on the men and share words from Torah and study together with some men, some women. And one of the men I used to go to, his name was Yosef Ziza, really, really short guy, a Georgian. And we used to have great chats. He worked in an office, and his brother-in-law worked in the same office. His brother-in-law was the head of Jews for Jesus in Stavropol. He was a Jewish guy, so we used to just he always argued with his brother-in-law, who tried to like convert him to Jews for Jesus. And so anytime I would walk in, he would, you know, he'd put on tefillin and we'd learn a bit. And then he'd say, come with me. We're going to go attack my brother-in-law and answer all his questions and show him what's the real way. And it was a lot of fun. And then I'd end up putting on tefillin on his brother-in-law. It was fun. So one of the things he told me, he grew up in serious communism. And he told me that when he was growing up, his mother was a very devout communist, and everything he had was not his. It belongs to Russia. So your bed is not yours, it's Russia's. So he decided that when he gets older, everything I'm going to own is mine. So he once told me that a jealousy runs the world, and we had good discussion on it, and he's kind of right. How do things get done? Often it's because of jealousy, right? Jealousy makes the world go. It's a negative trait, though. It's a very negative trait. And a jealous person is someone, that is what Ayin Hara is, right? Now, why is it called a jealous? Why isn't it just called a jealous eye or an eye of envy? Probably to emphasize that it's bad. Ayin Hara, the bad eye. Rather than just saying jealousy, it's related to the commandment, thou shalt not covet. That's what it's related to. And so now we'll go into a couple of commentary because time, and then we'll get into something a little more mystical. Oh, hold on. So someone else's negative, fearful thoughts about your possible good things happening in your life can have an effect on your life. The answer is yes. It has an effect on, so this is what I was going to get to with the commentary, but it has an effect both on the life of the person who is having these jealous thoughts. Someone who's having jealous thoughts, if I see someone with a snowblower right now, right? I'm like, man, I want that snowblower today. And I feel that jealousy, that affects me. It affects me psychologically because my day has just I've created these negative thoughts, right? I've created these negative thoughts and put them out there into my own mind. And the rest of my day, I'm not going to enjoy my coffee, right? When I go out later and I'm gonna get in my car, it's gonna bother me. I wish I had this, right? And it could apply to anything. Wishing you had someone's house, someone's car, someone's children, someone's anything. Jealousy affects us negatively and psychologically hurts us. We end up hurting ourselves when we're jealous of someone else. And it could be regardless of what it is. So when Alessandra's father says, do not, flaunt what you have, right? That you have something great, keep it quiet, enjoy it. There's definitely to that, because why would you would cause someone else unnecessary pain. That person is going to look at I don't know, your house and say, oh wow, I wish I had that house. You could live in a mansion quietly, nobody knows, but you'll cause someone else to have a bad day because you showed off those pictures of your house. But it also affects the person who is being made jealous, who they're being jealous of, right? That person also. By the way, there's like the Chovos HaLevavos says that really everything, the Ayin Hara has no power. It doesn't really have any power. Really, it's God who he's above all that, right? But that's just one opinion. Anyway, it's similar to Maris Ayin. Maris Ayin is like, I can't go into a McDonald's and use the bathroom there because people might think that, they'll see, oh, Rabbi Hershkowitz, Rabbi Tzvi was in McDonald's, so I could eat at McDonald's. So Alessandra asks, how do we protect ourselves? So I'll get to that. But first, let me get to something mystical. But it's also practical. Have any of you ever heard of the double slit experiment? This is a real experiment done. You could look it up. You could do it yourself. If you have the right equipment, but you could look it up on, you could YouTube it. The double slit experiment. Basically, it's they took matter and on a tiny, a microscopic level, and they threw it at a wall. Now, if you're throwing it at a wall, it's going to end up suppose on the wall, it's going to end up, if you're shooting it out of, I don't know, a cannon, it's going to end up around this button, right? It's just going to, there'll be a bunch of matter splattered over here, right? Now, what they did was they took this wall and they put a slit inside the wall, and then there was another wall behind it. So now if you're throwing matter at the wall, whatever goes through, there ends up in kind of a square behind it, right? Does that make sense? Right? It just goes right through and splatters the other wall. So then they did it with two slits inside the first wall, and they're throwing matter at the first wall and behind in the next wall. Can anyone guess what you saw? You can unmute. Any guesses?
More squares?
Two. Well, two. Well, exactly whatever the slits look like. Two slits, right? Like kind of like when you graffiti, you spray paint through something, the letter C, and there's a letter C, right? So there were two, like not squares, but like rectangles on the wall. But now something else happened. One of the scientists happened to go away. Happened to just look away. When he looked back, the results suddenly looked different. Instead of there being just two lines along the wall, there was something like 8 or 16. I think there were 16 lines along the wall. And we're not talking about splattered all over. It was 16 straight little slits. So what's going on? How could there be 16? Anyone have an idea of what was going on? before I get to why the difference, but why would there be 16 as opposed to 2? So I did not figure this out either, but I'll tell you. It's a tough one. Basically, it's kind of like moving underwater. If you put 2 things into the water, drop 2 things into the water, it creates waves, and the waves push, and instead of there just being 2, it ends up with 16, right? Does that make sense? Because the 2 like crash into each other and make 4, and then the 4 crash into each other and make 8. So it was using an underwater kind of pattern as opposed to a straightforward normal pattern. Notice the whole underwater fish whole thing, you know, that we were getting at. But what they discovered is, and here's the main point, is that so he thought it was broken, his machine, what he had done. So he tried it again, and he looked inside, and it went 2, and then he looked away, 16. Every time, anyone who, you could do it yourself, like I said, if you had the right equipment, if you do not look, or you don't have a camera looking, suddenly there are 16. The results appear differently. And as soon as you look, the results are 2. That is proof on a quantum level that on a very, that our eyes actually physically change things. By looking at something, you can actually change it. There you have like scientific evidence that by looking at something, you physically change it. So Ayin Hara, is there something to Ayin Hara? Absolutely, right? There's got to be something. Now, there are some people who cannot be affected by Ayin Hara, and some of these things, like the Khamsas, there's something to them. The fish, the red strings, all of that. There's definitely something to them. People have experiences. I should go back to the importance of fish. Fish had to do with them being underwater. And therefore, the Talmud tells us they are not affected by Ayin Hara. There's actually, someone was asked, I forget who, this is one of the Achronim or Rishonim, I forget which rabbi was asked, and he said that he carries around a fin of a fish with him at all times, and he suggests people do that. The fin of I'm not suggesting you do that, all right? You will smell horrible, but he carried around with him a fin of a fish, and that was to avoid Ayin Hara. This is one of the great rabbis. I don't remember which one. So
I have a question, if you
yes.
don't mind. So with the fish, is it also that fish are like simple and pure and they don't really have a brain per se?
Yes, it is. It's exactly that. It's the idea being, do not, right? Don't stand out. The way to avoid Ayin Hara is to keep, be happy. Whatever you have, just be happy with it, but try to avoid that. I would say you can, be sensitive in how you tell other people about your successes. It doesn't mean don't share your successes, but share them with people who will really be joyful for you. Don't share them necessarily with people who will become jealous of you, because they can create an Ayin Hara. So that would be one way of avoiding an Ayin Hara. Any other ideas of how to avoid Ayin Hara?
I don't really have another, but I just want to say I think my father and Alexandra's father were one and the same. Because I grew up with the same Lo Ayin Hara.
Yeah. I also, my father also was very much into like he would always say, one day I'm gonna win the lottery and I'm not gonna tell anyone ever.
My father wears red underwear to protect himself.
Wow. Well, yeah, that's that one I've never heard, but that's awesome.
Yeah, because like the red string.
Yeah.
Right. So
okay,
red,
but does he buy them initially red, or what if there's a sale, 10 underwear for $1? Does he buy spray paint and spray paint?
No, he will buy them red on purpose so that he can wear red underwear, so he can protect himself from other people's eye.
That's interesting. I've never I never knew that.
That's his extension of
yeah, well, I don't know. Maybe there's a source of that.
Listen, I believe that, if we say Shema Israel every day, we are protected by God. I mean, that's my prayer of choice, but certainly everybody has their own, the Amidah or, whatever. And I think that if you trust that you are in the good, you can protect yourself even from others.
Yes, there's also, they say that if you don't believe in Ayin Hara, it protects you. That's what they say. So everyone, first of all, there are tons of different traditions, and you follow your tradition, you follow your father. So if he's and he's right, that is what it's related to jealousy. I never went into what Ayin Ra is. Anyway, it's not where we were going, but you could see examples of what's jealousy like as a child. As a child, jealousy is you have the let's say there's the most smart kid in the class, right? So how are you going to like on a practical level, there's someone you're jealous of, or really someone is obnoxious in showing off all their whatever they have. They come to school, they have the best notebooks, they annoy you. So what do you do as a kid in like 4th grade? What do? If you're a boy, you punch them out in the yard, right? Or you make fun of them in public. You do everything to get, to really hurt them, right? That would be something you would kind of do. In high school, how would it be? What would you do in high school to someone who, makes everyone jealous, someone who a show off? What are you going to do to show off in high school?
Probably bully them. That's what people do today.
Yeah. How would you bully them is my question. How would you bully them?
Verbally.
Verbally, still in high school, it's verbally. Now, what about in college?
You avoid them. Move on, move along.
But if it's bothering you, if this person just keeps showing off and is in your face and is annoying you, right? What are you going to do? You're going to start, it's going to be more subtle, right? As an adult.
Sense of humor.
Hopefully that's how you'll get through it. But as an adult, if someone's really annoying you, if you find someone very obnoxious and someone just keeps on showing off everything there, in truth, if you're jealous of someone, if I am jealous of someone, it's a lot more subtle. It keeps getting more subtle. And how is it more subtle? You talk behind the person's back, right? You spread rumors about the person, maybe whether consciously or subconsciously, right? It'll come a time when someone calls you and says, hey, this person, Ruvain, right? This person, Ruvain, and you're thinking, oh my gosh, that obnoxious guy. He came over to me he wants a job. Fami, I'll take your question in a moment, but he wants a job. You're going to say, listen, he's not such a great guy, right? I mean, you can give him a job. He's totally capable, but socially, he's not great, right? So this is the practical application of how it could actually damage the person who you are jealous of. If someone is jealous of you, they can potentially, without you even realizing it, when it comes to shidduchim, to finding a spouse, right? Someone could behind your back say something that you never even knew, and something great, you missed out on a great opportunity. So that's the practical application of what Alessandro's and who else was it? Lana's fathers are telling them. Once you do that, you're causing that something, the subtle things, right? Your child might not be accepted into a school because of rumors that never happened. Fami, what was your question or comment?
Thank you. So there is something okay, so I will give 2 or 3 things. I was studying this for some time. So there's something called shomer ayin. I mean, the best thing is you don't look. So like shomer ayin. And
shmiras einayim. Yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm saying in Arabic, but it's how I.
Oh, that's Arabic. Shomer ayin.
No, ayin is the same thing. It's so the best way is you don't look. That's the best way. I mean, if somebody's bothering you, because don't look at him. It's the best thing. the second thing, which so about Ayin Hara, there is a wonderful course from Rabbi Haim Sitruk. He's like the grand rabbi he's from Tunisia. Was grand rabbi of France. He says something very powerful, like, so what we are is what we see, but he gives something more profound, is what we think is what we see. So
That's
according to him, is like, when you look at something, is because your head, because something going in your brain who wants you to look at that thing. So maybe the
You
NRI
can
is
say
like,
even further than that. You could say even further. That's profound. And you could say even further than that. When even looking at something that your brain has decided you look at, you have the choice of how you're going to look at it too, right?
yeah. And maybe the third thing is like, you are talking about fish and all that stuff. I love fish. So it's like, the one of the ways to take out sorcery or bad spells is to go into mikveh, or to go to the sea and splash into the sea. So when you go into the sea, it removes bad spells and everything. If you cross like a sea, like you take a plane and you cross the sea, or you cross a river, it takes also bad. So from my understanding, when I said like, why the fish cannot go, fish cannot be impacted by Nara, because like they live underwater. So that's my understanding of the Torah. So
Yeah, that makes sense. That is the reason. Yes.
But,
Cheryl has a question, but you could continue, Fami.
thank you. That's all I have. Thank you.
Oh, okay. Cheryl, you have a question or comment? Go ahead.
Okay. Rabbi Burnett said we could ask you anything. So here goes.
Uh-oh.
Why
I do
is
not wear
why?
red underwear. That is the answer.
No, it has to do with the fish. So why is, I'm so obsessed with the fish thing. So why are some fish kosher and other fish are not kosher? And what is the story with the gills? And that's what makes it kosher. And are the fish without gills affected at all by the Ayin Hara?
That's a great question. You're asking, are non-kosher, is it related to kosher fish versus non-kosher fish? That's one of your questions, right?
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know the answer to that. That's a solid question. I have no idea what the answer to that is. I think the idea
Okay.
is primarily just that fish, they kind of are like extraterrestrial beings to us, right? They live underwater. They have a whole different, for example, in that double slit experiment, when we look at things, we see something here and then it goes there, and it's not, we throw something at the wall, it lands on the wall. I throw two hockey pucks at the net, it hits the net twice. But if a fish was doing it underwater, there would be 12 hockey pucks hitting the net, right? There would be 12, however that works. Not necessarily 12 hockey pucks, but it's a different reality for fish. So that might be why. As far as kosher fish versus non-kosher fish, the truth is we don't understand the real reason why God chose that fish with fins and scales should be kosher and fish without should not be kosher. I mean, you could go into something like the Maimonides style, the Rambam, who practically said that certain things are healthy for us and certain things aren't, but we don't know the real reason.
Thank you. So it doesn't have to do with bottom feeders necessarily, as we know
Maybe it
them.
does. Maybe it's something that if you could look at it from that's what Maimonides would say, that God wanted us to avoid eating bottom feeders. So he said, all right, no fish that have fins and scales hang out at the bottom. So let's make things easy and eat only healthy fish. But again, if that's correct, right? If you look at it that way, the criticism of that, so someone like the Ravid would harass the Rambam, and he would say that, okay, so why doesn't the Torah just say eat healthy fish? Like it could say outright. Why does it have to go through like, oh, only eat fish with fins and scales? Just say
It's subjective. That's too subjective.
that's
Eat a
fair.
healthy-
It's a fair
eat a
argument. That
healthy
might be what
fish,
Maimonides
yeah.
would respond. Yes. Alessandra wanted to say something. We have not too long left.
Thank you. I think it aligns with the teaching that we've had since the beginning of this course, which is to align our thoughts, our speech, and our actions. And therefore, like we've learned how to train ourselves to move away from negative thoughts and always keep it positive, or even to the point where we don't have an opinion. I don't need to have an opinion about this, so I don't have an opinion. And I think it, like, we can prevent ourselves from at least exposing ourselves to our own Ayin Hara, in a sense, of by aligning our thoughts with positivity.
Yeah, I think that's
If
a,
I'm-
a practical solution to it. I would say the 3 practical ways to avoid an Ayin Hara. Number 1, being sensitive to others. Number 2, not being out there, like being, somewhat, I guess, modest in who we tell and how we tell what we have. And number 3 would be just enjoying what we have because we want it. Like, another point would be just don't live for others, right? I shouldn't buy things I don't want, but that I just kind of want, because someone else has it, so I either want the same thing or something better, because then that's coming from a negative place. Julian.
Thank you. I had a few questions. One is, you mentioned that we're affected by the evil eye and it affects our lives, apart from a few people. But I was wondering, with the patriarchs and Hagar and Sarah, if they've been affected by the evil eye, how that might have affected us as their descendants.
So that's a solid question. I think I was asked. I think I saw something like that you asked it in the chat, I think, and I missed it. I forgot to get to it. But the patriarchs and Hagar, the evil eye over there. That's a good question. I don't know the answer to it. I don't know the answer. It may have affected us. Absolutely. We are, right? As someone who loves history, I say that we are the results of history. So if Abraham and Hagar are, that's a great story where you could definitely relate it to an evil eye. And I think it does affect us, right? If my parents or my grandparents or someone up there in my ancestry had some jealous experience related to jealousy, it affects us, right? If they were jealous people, that we become our parents. Either we become the opposite of our parents, or we become our parents. But that's why life is work to try to change some of what's natural to us, and sometimes it's really hard.
Thank you. And the second one was, do tell me if I'm reading them too fast, but I want to make sure I cover them. The second one was, there is a statement somewhere, the more wives, the more witchcraft, and it's referring to a man.
That's in the Pirkei Avot. That's in the Ethics of Our Father. That is. I could find it. And Marbe Nashim, let me find it. I think it's in the same chapter. Here we go. It's actually 2. I could literally share. It's 2 Mishnahs before. Let me share my screen. Literally 2 Mishnahs before. It's chapter 2, number 7, Mishnah 7. He used to say, and it comes along with many things. Marba Basar, Marba Rima. The more flesh, the more worms. That's referring to right after. Marba Nechasim, Marba Daiga. The more property someone has, the more worry they have. Marba Noshim, Marba Chvashim. The more wives, the more witchcraft. This is a very basic way of looking at things. We're not going to go into that now, but that's a whole discussion.
Well, the question was just that obviously multiple wives will be jealous of each other. Hagar and Sarah being one example, and obviously multiple husbands would be theoretically, if not so common. But I was wondering, because of that statement, and because it's obvious that multiple partners makes jealousy, if the evil eye is actually because it's associated with jealousy, if the evil eye was actually the beginning of witchcraft.
Ooh, So that I can't answer if the evil eye was the beginning of witchcraft.
Ah,
I could point to what Yosef Zizo says, that
oh,
jealousy runs the world. Notice, and this is going to go full circle. I opened up with the story of Hannah. Why did Hannah pray for a son? Why did she run and cry at Shiloh? She wouldn't have gone and prayed for a son. We wouldn't have had Samuel, who made King David King David. We wouldn't have had that. How did it all come about? Because Hannah's husband had a second wife named Penina, who was harassing her. And who was that annoying person who was saying, I have 7 children and you have none. Look at you. You think, you know, your husband likes you, but I'm the real wife. That led to Hannah running to Shiloh. It's a good way to, you know, circle all.
oh,
Yeah.
thank you for that. It's really interesting. I'm just gonna put the third question in. I hope I'm not interrupting you, but just want
Sure.
to make sure it's there. Thank you. So what is it about the water? What causes the water to protect from the evil eye and spells? What is it
Well,
about?
I wouldn't say that I wouldn't say that for sure water protects from evil eyes. You don't see people walking around carrying water, but I think it's that we don't understand what's in water. It's one of those places where, you know, people are even, my father had a fear of water all his life. He was scared. We would go to the beach and he would refuse to get in the water. Even, he would shower, but, you know, no bath. He was terrified of these things because water is scary.
Oh,
We don't know. It's the non-knowledge of what's in water. You know, you could step, I guess, on the on something, and suddenly there's a crab there, or something that, you know, bites at you. So we don't know. We don't see what's in the water. I think that's part of it, and then there's also the other parts that were previously mentioned.
wow. Thank you for answering. It's really interesting.
Yeah, thanks for the questions. They're good questions. They're solid questions. Yeah, someone writes in there. Cheryl writes, "Did Rabbi B tell me that you were deep thinkers?" Yes, he did. And wow, amazing, good stuff. You guys are real deep thinkers.
If you've ever been to mikveh, you may have felt the sense of purity that comes with immersing yourself in water, and that's probably the power it may have on cleansing. Because when you, at least for me, coming out of mikveh makes me feel like I've been cleansed,
Yes.
and from everything. I don't want to say the good and the bad, but like everything, I've been released of everything I was carrying. So maybe that's why we can associate removing the evil eye with water.
That makes sense. Not necessarily in a men's mikvah. I mean, over there, now, you know, you go to a men's mikvah. You don't go to do not.
I don't go to men's mikveh. I'm sorry.
You don't want to
we
see
have
one of
different-
but you don't even want to see one of them. You go and you suddenly understand how Jesus walked on water. They're so dirty. No, that's a joke. That's a joke.
Is our mikveh ready?
All right, close to it. I asked, I was there yesterday, and I asked David Kakon, when will it be ready? He said in 2 months. So we're close. It's going to be awesome. Julian, your hand
I'm
is.
sorry.
No worries.
I was replying to. Oh, sorry. I was replying to someone. I forgot to send it directly to them because I was panicking because I was thinking it might end. It might end. So I was trying to type as fast as possible and send it as fast as possible. Sorry, I shouldn't have confused.
No worries. No, I just see your hand was up. Let me go back.
I forgot to put it down. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, you could get your hand could get from being up for so long. You could get
They've got that effect without the evil eye, so goodness knows.
Yeah, exactly. Let me see some of these comments over here. It's usually what time does this class finish?
No.
Like around now?
Oh,
okay.
we have
because I know there's another Gemara class coming up. So okay, hold on. So let's look over here. Julian asked why it's called a jealous and why it isn't called. Yeah, I think I answered that. someone's negative, fearful thoughts about possible good things happening in your life could have an effect on your life. So the answer is yes, even practically, because someone's you're asking if someone's fearful thoughts about possible good things. Kelsey, that's a great question. Someone's well, I guess you've made yourself somehow noticed, right? If someone else is worried about good things happening to you. But I don't think someone who's worried about good things happening to you is going to be talking necessarily behind your back. But I don't know. It's a good question. In other words, I think the question is, if I look at someone and somehow I'm jealous of that person, there must be some history there as to why I would think this way, because it wouldn't come out of nowhere. But I'm worried that this person will, I don't know, get a great job or, you know, get that car that I've always wanted. Right. So if I'm worried about that, I will have negative thoughts towards that person. So there is something to that, I think. To me, it makes sense. That's why you would want to avoid making people jealous, giving anyone any idea, any reason. And sometimes people like get stuck on it. You ever see people who are their complete focus or for a period of time is just on one person. You see it with kids who are more open about these things. You know, I'll have my sons and sometimes I'll get into fights, and one of them just like, you know, for the next hour is just every little thing the other boy does. Look, he did this, you know, and he's just totally focused on there. And there's an aspect of jealousy there. Okay, let's see the other comments. How do we protect ourselves? I think we went through ideas there. The patriarchs, did we discuss that? The importance of fish we discussed. Yeah, Alessandra, praying the way that you said was very, very well said. Evil eye, beginning of witchcraft. I'm no expert on witchcraft. I don't know, but you could look up the commentary on that Mishnah in Avot. Look up Rabbeinu Yonah. Look and see what he says about the more wives a man has, the more witchcraft, and you'll see it. It'll be very fascinating. What is it about water? There's a couple of new messages. Gratitude, that's an important thing. Gratitude, living with gratitude is that definitely helps. Okay. 1 second. Made observation. I would tell one family member about good things that we would be doing, and then it would fall through. So I started praying that their thoughts would not have more power than mine. So I don't know if that's Kelsey, I don't know if that's what you should do. Rather, if that family member, if you notice that you tell a family member about good things that you're doing and then it falls through, don't tell that specific family member, because what might be happening is that family member might be having bad thoughts, which turns it to practical, or possibly even taking it to the next level. That family member might be actually doing something behind your back that you have no idea to make sure it doesn't happen based off of their jealousy. That's the reason why you want to lay low and not tell that family member. All right. I think that's it. Folks, have a great day. Next week, I have no idea what topic I'll talk about. If anyone has any ideas, suggestions, or whatever, because I know you're in the middle of like this long, he was telling me you're like in the middle of some long discussion on something, but I don't want to, you know, so not on his topic. Any other topic?
That makes sense.
Dreams. Ooh, there's a topic.
Thank you.
Okay, I like that. I'm gonna do some research on dreams. Okay.
Thank you.
Discuss them.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank
Have a
Thank
great
you,
day,
Rabbi.
everyone.
Have a good. You too. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Shabbat shalom,
Bye.
everybody.
Shabbat
Yes,
shalom.
Uh,
Are we staying for the Talmud? Do you do Rabbi
I'm going to be doing the
Bernard's
Talmud too, so you could stick around if you're in the
thank
Talmud.
you.
Let me stop the recording. Hold on.
Oh.
Let me stop the recording.